This issue can be summed up in a nutshell.
Chit chat. In this chitty chat chat. In this chit chat.
To no one's surprise, it looks like Tim Sheridan's Green Lantern book isn't a smash hit. Despite begging people to buy his book to own Comicsgate, issue 1 debuted at number 80 on the ICV2 charts. There aren't exact numbers for how many books were ordered, but for perspective, books in the top 10 usually sell between 75 to 100,000 books. Books ranking near 50 are usually half that, which means Sheridan's book is probably somewhere around 15 to 20,000 orders. In short, barely anyone bought it. Like I said, that's not surprising. Setting aside Sheridan's e-begging video, the book itself wasn't going to bring it out of people because the focus of the book wasn't about Alan Scott being Green Lantern, but instead about Alan Scott being gayer than a bag of Skittles, which has nothing to do with being a superhero, the genre of the story. As I said in my review of the first issue, if Sheridan wants to write about being gay in the 1940s, he's free to do so. But if he wants to write genre fiction, then the story he tells needs to fit within and be built around the tropes of that genre. The first issue failed to do this, and the second issue continues to do the same thing. It has nothing to do with superheroes. However, it gets worse because Sheridan also fails at telling the story he wants to tell by breaking the most basic rule of storytelling: show, don't tell. The first issue ended with this image of Alan Scott getting electroshock therapy to cure him of his sexuality, so what you'd expect to see in the next issue is how this goes down. Nah, that's not what you get. What you get is a whole lot of chitty chat. We don't get to see what Alan goes through in Arkham Asylum. Instead, we're told, via Alan plot-splaining to Derby, what he thinks about the situation. Oh, we do get a scene where some dude is dragged screaming to some unexplained experimental treatment, but we don't get to know anything about this person, what the treatment entails, or how it was decided that this would be done to him. We're meant to find it horrific, but it's so out of context that while it comes across as bad, there's no reason to care. The same thing goes for how Alan winds up in Arkham. He says that his commanding officer found out about him and Johnny, his boyfriend, but it's not clear how that happened. Sure, they weren't trying to hide what they were doing, but the last we saw of Johnny was him getting dragged away by the Crimson Flame. How did the commanding officer find out about them? I'm gonna assume it's from the photos that Hoover used to blackmail Green Lantern. Maybe Johnny had those stashed with his gear, so when someone went to clean out his stuff, they found the photos, but we don't get any explanation in the book. Instead, we get that Alan is supposedly here of his own free will, playing along with the military's hope that this will straighten him out while he's constantly eyeballing one of the orderlies. He's so obvious that it comes off as unbelievable after we just saw some guy get dragged away for treatment. If these people are just looking for a reason to experiment on you, why would you give them one? The irony is that in the same scene, he warns another dude, Billy, about giving him a gift because people might think they're a couple. So Alan's paranoid about that, but is totally oblivious to how staring at an orderly might come across. Alan is supposed to be a smart man. This doesn't make him look smart. Now let's get to Billy, Alan's roommate, who is Sheridan's reimagined version of the character Billings from the original Green Lantern origin. In the original story, he was just a random patient in treatment who had a knack for metalwork, so when the hospital gets his green Chinese lamp, Billings turns it into the train lantern that later gives Alan his powers. In Sheridan's reimagining, Billy is either a cross-dresser or transgender, and like Alan, apparently oblivious to the threat of the experimental treatment, because when we meet Billy, he's dolling himself up before they go to their group therapy session. There's no way this dude wouldn't know that's not gonna fly, so it comes across as silly and completely removes any sense of threat in the situation. We're meant to think these guys are in danger, but none of them act like it. So Billy makes the lantern and gives it to Alan. In this reimagining, Billy was just inspired out of nowhere to make something he's never seen before. There's no context for random inspiration being the thing the green flame can do. It just happens. Alan and Billy end up having a little argument over Alan wearing Johnny's ring, since it would put Alan at risk for treatment, and Alan storms off. Later that night, the lantern wakes Alan up with the phrase, "We bring life," and he finds Billy missing. About a week later, Billy returns, only to have been lobotomized. We're meant to feel terrible about this, and on its face, it is a horrible thing. This was done to countless gay and trans people, and all of them were not adults. However, we don't know anything about Billy. We don't get to know him as a person, so there's no connection to his suffering. We don't know what he's lost or how he's been changed. We get nothing from Billy's perspective. Instead, we're just told by Alan, literally in his journal, about how he feels, and it's just him making the argument that it's jacked up that gay and trans people are treated this way. But because we never get to see what is happening to them or get to know any of the characters, it just doesn't resonate. This is a perfect example of what happens when the message is more important than the story. Tim Sheridan isn't interested in telling the superhero story. He wants to tell a story about the mistreatment of gay and trans people. Okay, fine. Then do it. He has 6 issues for the miniseries. He could have taken one of the issues to show how Alan gets locked up in Arkham, show a cast of characters, give the reader some connection to at least 2 of these people, add some backstory, some character development, show them to be multidimensional people so that when one of them gets dragged away for treatment, or really torture, the reader cares because they understand there's nothing wrong with him. Instead of having Billy tell Alan that he sees Alan as a hero who rescued him from the darkness of Arkham, show it. Let us see how Alan acts, how he befriends Billy, accepts Billy for who she, as Billy prefers, is. Show us how Alan defends these men, how he stands up for them, how he uses his position as a self-admitted patient to protect those who were put there against their will. Show him putting himself at risk for others, so that when the doctors decide to take Alan away and torture him like they've done to everyone else, we see how much they were looking for a reason, any reason, to get at this man. That way, when he becomes the Green Lantern, you've already established that he has the characteristics to be a hero. But see, that would make too much sense, and this isn't that kind of story. Tim Sheridan just wants to opine, so he just flies right past the one thing that everybody expected to see, Alan getting shock treatment. The artist didn't even have the decency to draw a new image. He just used what I guess was supposed to be the cover and cropped it to fit the panel. And it's only after this, after Alan himself gets tortured, that he decides something must be done, making it look like he only cared because it happened to him. The rest of the issue is just Alan telling us what happened. The orderly who caught his eye helps Alan and the others escape, and also turns out to be gay. Because of all the places a gay man would choose to work, it'd be in a place where they torture you for being gay. Alan then starts his engineering company, his rival Albert Decker blows up the bridge to crash the train, and the Green Flame gives Alan powers. Alan explains all of this to Derby and realizes that the dead body he found in the first issue, who I assumed was Johnny but turns out to be the orderly, was probably killed by someone who knows Alan's past, how he got the lantern, who he's dated over the years, and how Johnny died. The mystery now is who is the Crimson Flame? And the answer is, I don't care. Tim Sheridan had one job, tell a superhero story, and he pushed that aside to give himself a new job. Tell a story about the gay experience in the 1940s, which he completely fumbled. He could have nailed this in 2 out of his 6 issues, one setting up Alan going to Arkham, and the other Alan rescuing the other men and escaping. And he flubbed it by turning it into one massive monologue. So now the 8 people who bought the book to see the gay stuff don't even get to see anything. Bond girls get more development than this. Who is this book for? Because it's not for superhero fans, and it's not for gay slice of life fans. Who is supposed to like this? What are they supposed to get out of this? Why should they care about this story? If it's to own Comicsgate, Sheridan failed. No one is owned. Kind of like this book, because nobody's buying this. This appeals to no one. Not superhero fans, not gay fans, and not the right-wing chuds that Sheridan wants to humiliate. This is what happens when the message is more important than the story. There is no point. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.